TJ Houshmandzadeh. Obviously, you had a great career starting off in Cincinnati. It's a pleasure for us speaking with you, and we're excited to have you.
Man, it should be fun. I appreciate you having me, man. Thank you.
Great, great. Well, let's kick it off. So, first thing I got to say, we're here in New York, right? And a lot of big Jet fans are wondering, right, what's going on with Zach Wilson. And, something that I heard you say, which was really a great interview with you and Colin Cowherd, was, the Jets, since Mark Sanchez, right, have had such we call it bad luck here in New York, right, with quarterbacks. And I'm just curious, as a player, when do we start to say, okay, why isn't the coaching staff on the offensive side of the ball putting a better game plan for Zach Wilson to succeed?
Obviously, I don't know the ins and outs of the offense, but one thing that I do know is Nathaniel Hackett is offensive coordinator, and his track record. You just go back to Jacksonville when he had Blaine Gabbert, or not Blaine Gabbert, out of Central Florida. What's his name? The Jacksonville quarterback. It'll come to me.
Yes, I know who you're talking about. Yep.
It'll come to me in a second. But offensively, they were just okay. And he was really good in Green Bay because he had Aaron Rodgers. Like, I probably can go be the offensive coordinator. If Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback, I'm going to have success. Great players tend to mask the deficiencies of average coaches. And I don't know Nathaniel Hackett. I know last year, I will say this, when Russell Wilson struggled, it was like, wow, is he really this bad? And Russell Wilson is playing better this year. He's playing better this year with Sean Payton. And Zach Wilson, second pick of the draft, everybody thought he was going to be drafted high. And so you can't say, oh, the Jets made a bad draft pick. Everybody would have drafted Zach Wilson. So why hasn't he developed? And you look from Mark Sanchez to Geno Smith to Ryan Fitzpatrick to Sam Darnold, and now Zach Wilson. None of those guys can really play? Really? Specifically, Geno, who you drafted, Sam Darnold, who you drafted, and now Zach. None of those guys can really play. They all sucked. They all were busts. Or is it a culture thing that's going on? And so, of course, Zach Wilson has to shoulder some of the blame. Nathaniel Hackett is going to have to shoulder some of the blame. But I'm assuming it's a combination of things. When you don't play well and you're drafted high, obviously your confidence is going to take a hit. But the coaching and game planning should make things. You have a really good receiver that can win one-on-one. You're running the ball extremely well. So your read should be very defined. So it should be Zach Wilson holding on to the ball like he doesn't know where to go, because if they're going to play you too high safety, look, you just run the ball. And they play you single high, throw the ball to Garrett Wilson. And it doesn't help. Lazard didn't have his best game. He didn't help Wilson. So when a quarterback is struggling, your complementary pieces and your skill guys, they got to do their part.
And that's a great point, right? And I think that with his confidence level, right, it's something where, can the coaching staff be able to get the ball out quickly, right? Can they be able to, hey, get him some easy throws? Where can we be able to build that confidence early on so then he feels confident, and maybe the defense starts to relax a little bit? Hey, they're getting the ball out quicker. Maybe we need to drop the corners a little bit back. And then
Chris,
that's
I'm
when
sorry. It was Blake Bortles. That's who I was talking about. Blake Bortles. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, no, you're good. Yeah, no, it's and like, you're right? Look what he had. So it's very interesting, and something that here in New York, right? They were talking to Robert Saleh, who was on the radio, and they asked him, what will it take to maybe make a quarterback change, right? And I think Saleh's a tremendous coach. I think he has his guys playing so well, that defense. I mean, those guys love playing for him, but he sounded a little hesitant, like it isn't his decision. And I find that odd, because I'm like, man, you're the head coach. The head coach should be able to make that decision, what's best for the team. As you know, as a player, when guys start to hear that and they're like, he's not giving us the best chance to win, and I'm putting everything I can, Sauce Gardner and all these guys are playing their tails off, I wonder if the higher ups, I'm curious to see from a player perspective, has that ever happened? Have you ever seen that from maybe other teams where you can tell, oh, the head coach really may want to make a change, but his hands are tied? Maybe because he's the number 2 overall pick.
Chris, I'll be honest with you, man. With all due respect, you really think Simeon is going to be a better option than Zach Wilson. What option do they have? They
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
have an
you're
option.
100%. Yep.
What other option do they have?
Hmm.
Zach Wilson is their best option. Now, you could say they probably should have signed Carson Wentz. They probably could have traded for Kirk Cousins. Now that he's injured, that's not a possibility. So, to me, Zach Wilson is their best option. They don't have anything else.
Hmm.
And there's plenty of occasions where the front office, they want to see Zach Wilson play. And he has improved, but he hasn't improved at the rate that they need him to improve at. And so Salah may not want to play him. What other option does he have?
Hmm.
Because you go play Simeon, it's going to get worse. And that's
Yeah.
just my opinion. And so he has no other options. And so for him to say what he said, he couldn't say that. Hey guys, what y'all want me to do? Y'all want me to go play Trevor Simeon? He can't say that, but that's basically what he's saying.
Yeah, and it's funny because here in New York, you know how the fans are, right? Oh, pick up a guy off the street, he'll be better, right? And it's like, listen, it's way more, as you know, TJ, way more complicated than that, especially at the quarterback position where there's so many things going on, and that's great to know. And yes, I'm in agreement with you. Unfortunately, I think Zach Wilson is the best option right now that they have because you look at his talent level, right? At least he can move, he can run. The offensive line is banged up. So you rather have a guy in there who can actually at least move the ball
Man,
with
that
his legs. And
offensive line is trash.
yep,
Like that,
exactly.
and they talking Aaron Rodgers coming back. All right, come back behind that offensive line. You're gonna be right back out.
I've had arguments with people saying you do not want him back. This guy will not be able to move out that pocket. So let him wait another year, hoping that O-line builds. But let's get on to a team, man, that started off slow, that everyone was, oh, this team is done, to the Cincinnati Bengals, right? I mean, they're coming out of here and winning 4 straight games, and not against teams that are bottom of the league. You're talking about really good teams that they look really, really good. Obviously, we'll see what's going on with Jamar Chase. I know his back issue, but hopefully he'll be back and ready to roll. But how did they look, and how did they start to get back that mojo? And do you think they're good enough to unseat the Baltimore Ravens?
Since Joe Burrow's been the quarterback, they've started rough. And when you think about it, he tore his ACL. He's coming back. He's not going to be 100%. The following season, he has I think he had an emergency appendectomy, appendix removed. I believe so. This year, his calf injury, and so he just wasn't healthy. And I don't know what it is about November, December, and January when it comes to Joe Burrow and the Bengals. He plays extremely well during that time period, 15-5, passer rating over 100, and so they play well when they're needed. And the Ravens have a complete team. Offensively, they're playing very well. Defensively, number 1 defense in the league. And so it's not going to be easy. But the Bengals can control their own destiny, meaning we've got to play the Ravens again in the division. You got to play the Browns, who's also beating us in the division. And so you kind of control your own destiny, but you got to go out there and get it. And it's not going to be easy because specifically the Ravens with the number 1 defense. But when you watch the Browns, they look as if they're the number 1 defense the way they get after the quarterback. But when you think the Bengals and you think just that division, if we need one drive to win a game out of that division, what offense you going to take?
Oh, yeah. Listen, I'm taking Joe Burrow any day of the week with his weapons.
That's why I think they can make a run here and supplant the Ravens just because of that. The offense is so explosive. The defense plays well. And so if they can continue this, offense is not ranked high because of the way they started, but they'll gradually work their way up the rankings. And so I say that because I feel if a drive is needed, I trust that Bengals offense more than anybody else's in that division.
I totally agree. And, I hate to make comparisons, right? Because every player is their own, but it reminds me a lot like when Brady gets into the playoffs and he changes. It's just like what you think you know about him in the regular season, throw it out the window. And that's exactly what Joe Burrow does, right? We talked about it when they went to the Super Bowl in 2021. Everyone's like, that O-line is trash. They can't do anything. They can't block. What does he do? Okay, I got you. Let's go to the Super Bowl. And that team, they just have that will, and he's always so calm. He's never flustered. He's one play, that's fine. I throw a pick, no problem. I'm going to come back and throw a touchdown. And it's very, very interesting to see how that team is now rolling. And week 11, I'm excited to see Bengals Ravens. Obviously, the Ravens got the better of them early on, but this is a whole different Bengals team that they're going to see. And that confidence that we talked about is going to be very, very key. So I'm looking forward to that. So through week 9, do you think the Ravens right now are the best team? Now listen, a crazy stat that I can't believe is untrue. Lamar Jackson, 18-1 against NFC teams. And he is being, it's funny, it's like, not only has he just dominated the two best teams in the NFL and the NFC, that arguably people say the 49ers and the Detroit Lions as well, Detroit Lions and Seattle Seahawks, but 9 points? That Detroit team is loaded on offense. Everyone was saying that week that they're probably the best team in the NFC, and they put up 6 points. And it's to me, man, that defense, and Harbaugh has that team coached up so well. So I'm curious, do you think that they're right now through week 9 the best team in the NFL?
Oh man, they're one of, and I'm not going to discredit the Ravens because of what they've done. And when you talk complementary football, they can beat you on the offensive end. They can beat you on the defensive end. There's very few teams that are top 6 in both categories, with the Ravens being first in defense and 6th in offense. To say the best team is so premature, but they're one of, because what they've done up to this point has warranted that. They've earned that. Now, they've yet to play when you talk to NFC, because to me, the best 2 teams in the NFC when teams are fully healthy are the Eagles and the Niners. And so, yeah, they've beaten the secondary teams in the NFC and the Lions and the Seahawks. But the AFC is loaded, and eventually everything will sort itself out. It will sort itself out with the Chiefs, the Jags, the Ravens, the Bengals, the Browns, the Bills. That will sort itself out. But I would put the Baltimore Ravens for sure. They're a top 3 team in the league because they've earned it up until this point.
And like you mentioned, man, that division, they just beat each other up. It's just, and I feel like iron sharpens iron, right? And whoever comes out of there, right, they're only going to get better. And people think, oh, the Steelers, but they're right there with Cincinnati, with Cleveland, right? Like when you think about how this team has played, and you're forgetting, like, wow, they're actually put up some good wins, and that's just, but they're well coached, right? And that's going to be very interesting. I'm very excited. Right now, if you had to choose week 11, who's winning that game? Ravens, Bengals.
Oh, I would take the Bengals for sure. And I say this, and I played with the Ravens, and I really enjoyed my time there. Harbaugh, I think, is a great coach. Ownership, top to bottom, the way they run things is the proper way that you do things. But I just feel like the Bengals have the better team. And I can be naive because I'm just looking at it from the offensive side of the ball and all the weapons and things of that nature. It's not going to be easy because you have the unanimous MVP in Lamar. The offense is playing better. They can beat you via the run, and it looks as if now they can beat you through the air passing the ball. And so I just like the dynamic possibilities with the playmakers that the Bengals have every single play. And now that Joe's healthy, I'm a roller with the Bengals. But it's hard to beat a good team twice in your division. That's hard. That's not an easy feat. And if the Ravens do, if they accomplish that, you might want to look out, because then the Ravens will probably be for real Super Bowl contenders. And when I say for real, I mean more than likely coming out the AFC.
Oh, yeah. And listen, they're not beating a team that's maybe, rebuilding. They're beating a team that's going to compete. And if they sweep the Bengals, like you mentioned, I think a lot of people are going to be talking about that Ravens game in a whole new light if they can sweep the Bengals. Because that's like you mentioned, that's tough to do in any division.
Because the Ravens' 2 losses, I mean, people would say, really? You lost to the Steelers and the Colts?
Yeah.
And so that's the tricky part of, like, those are the 2 losses, and they could technically be undefeated if you've watched those games and see how they played out. But Their 2 losses to the Steelers and to the Colts.
Yeah, which good teams, right? I mean, obviously now with Anthony Richardson not here, but Steelers are a good team, so it'll be interesting. TJ, as someone who's played the game at the highest level and someone who's a big fan, loved watching you play, and you were so physical and dominant whenever you touched the ball, is there someone in particular that reminds you of yourself and someone who maybe you enjoy watching playing, even if it's not on the Bengals but just someone like, man, when he's on, I love watching him.
There's not really anybody in particular. I just love the game of football. I really do. So, I mean, I'm tuned in to watch everybody. There's not one player specifically that I do enjoy watching. I just love the game of football. And if there's one player that I could say, the player that I'm going to name that reminds me most of myself, you may not know him because he's a rookie. And I'm going to say this name because I've trained him a lot, and he kind of, I wouldn't say mimics what I've done, but he listens to the things that I tell him very intently. And his name is Michael Wilson, a receiver that plays with the Cardinals.
Oh, listen, as someone who's a big football fan, I love watching the receiver position. A big secret of mine, I'm a big Rams fan, so I'm a huge Puka guy, and Cooper Kupp, right? But yeah, no, Michael Wilson, I mean, he's really looking good, and that's great because you need that complementary piece, right? I mean, everyone always thinks the receiver has just got to be fast, right? But there's so much more to the position, right? And they're almost like an extension of the quarterback and someone who can be able to break those tackles, right? That's what a lot of people forget is you catch the ball, well, you're going to be getting hit by a lot of these big guys. How can I break that and extend that play? And that's great. And, speaking of receivers, right, Puka, Cooper, and, we're seeing a lot of receivers, right, who are being drafted outside the first round. And if you look at Amon-Ra Brown, right, guys who are picked in the 5th round, are you surprised by all the success these later round receivers are having in today's game, rather than just the first?
Not at all. When you look at the receivers nowadays, they're coming into the league much better than they've ever been because they're getting access to better trainers. They're around better players at an earlier age. And so 7-on-7 football is a big reason. They get so many routes, so many reps, and they just work at it more. It's just when you're able to train with professional guys and you're maybe 15, 16, or just starting college, that's completely different than what it was for myself coming in. And the social media explosion has advanced it as well because you can train and watch different things. And if you're smart enough, you can start to mimic it and understand what they're trying to do. And so, no, it doesn't surprise me one bit that the guys that are drafted later are performing better than the guys that are drafted a little earlier.
Yeah, no, it's great, and it's great to see, and it's only going to continue to trend that way. You're seeing so many great guys, right? And it's just funny to see the GM's process, right? And people always say, "Man, how did this person slip?" And
hunger, you can't judge somebody's hunger when they feel like they should have been drafted higher. You can't judge that, and that determination, that desire of want to. You just can't judge it.
Yeah, and I love hearing the receivers that, I can name every receiver who was drafted in front of me. That right there, like you said, you can't put that. There's no stat for that, right? It's here. It's all hard, and it's great. Speaking of a receiver who's putting up ridiculous numbers, and it's rare that you see a receiver win MVP, but what does Tyreek Hill have to do? And do you think that he's in that conversation of if the season ended today of being in the MVP conversation?
Oh, he's for sure in the conversation. We all know he won't win it. I mean, he could have 2,500 receiving yards. The MVP has now become a quarterback award. And so the offensive player of the year is everybody else. I don't believe he will win it, but the conversation, absolutely, because I truly believe he's going to break Calvin Johnson's single season record. He'll break that. And the quarterback that has the best season on one of the better teams does not necessarily have to be the best team will win MVP, but Tyreek Hill 100% will be in the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I would love for him to win it. I think that'd be great. I mean, he's putting outstanding numbers, but I agree with you. They should just change it, right? Because it's every year it's going to a quarterback, and everyone knows it, right?
Adrian Peterson the last non-quarterback to win it?
I believe, yeah, I think he's the last one. Yeah, but which is like insane to think, right? You're like, wow, so why can't a receiver do it? And it should be, you should be able to do that. You see what he's doing in Miami. It's just incredible. Is there a team, it could be multiple, or is there some team that you feel that maybe has surprised you in a positive way, that you were like, wow, I did not expect them to be this good, and they're playing well? One team that comes to mind, obviously, I think is the Texans with CJ Stroud, and that team is really well coached, playing all phases are playing it as one, and CJ is looking really, really good.
I wouldn't say this team surprised me, but the Jags have surprised me because they have an opportunity to be the number one seed. I felt they would be a good team, but I didn't feel like they would be competing to be the number one seed in the AFC. So that surprises me. Obviously, the Texans, when you have the number 2 pick of the draft, you are a bad team. And now to be 4-4, that great quarterback play, great coaching by DeMeco Ryans. And so the Jags are the surprise because we all thought they would be better than they were last year. Trevor Lawrence is going to improve. You have Calvin Ridley now being able to play. But to be in contention for the number one seed in the AFC, I would say the Jags, to me, right now are the biggest surprise.
Yeah, I mean, they're playing really well. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence, and we talked about, right, coaching matters, right? And you see in good quarterback playing, right? Number 1 pick, looking better. The team's looking better. The person that was picked behind him for the New York Jets isn't really getting that same treatment, and like we talked about. So that's going to be very, very interesting.
Hey, think about this. Are you a Jets fan?
So yes, I obviously living here, living in the Jets.
Think about this, Chris. Think about this. Do you remember a few years back when the Jets had won one game and then they won? I think
they beat the Rams
at the end of the season. Cost them Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence could be the Jets quarterback if they had just lost. Think about the way they had the number 1 pick locked in, and then they won a game that did not matter, and it cost themselves Trevor Lawrence. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, and you know what the sad part is? The coach that won, Adam Gase, is no longer with the team the very next year. So you're sitting there going, but listen, as a player, right? It's hard for you to go, we're going to lose, right? Because a lot of these players aren't going to be there next year, right? And I'm sure you know that, right? If I'm not going to be there next year, I'm not worried about who you're picking up next. I'm trying to make sure I play well, and hey, trying to maybe get that second contract, that third contract. But fans, trust me, they're walking around here going, why did we win this game? This is ridiculous. And of course, it's Jets luck, right? That they would win a game that cost them the number 1 pick, which is very, very exciting and very upsetting to a lot of people here. But AFC, NFC, and season ended today. Who you like coming out of the AFC and the NFC?
Wow. So my preseason, I try to do this every year, and I've been lucky the last few years with this. My preseason picks for the Super Bowl were the Bengals and the Niners. And that still may hold true. And so I believe if we can make the playoffs, because the schedule's tough. The Bengals have a tough late season schedule, but I'm gonna stick with the Bengals. I picked them in the preseason, and I'm gonna stay with them. I would say the Bengals and the Niners because that was my preseason pick. Now the way the Eagles are playing gives me concern for the Niners making it, but my preseason pick was the Bengals and the Niners, and I'm gonna stay with it.
And who you like winning the Super Bowl then? I mean, we all know. We all know. We all know.
It's payback from Dwight Clark catching that pass in the back of the end zone many years ago. And so, I'm rolling with the Bengals.
Which is funny because I read something that this is the year that I think first-time teams have won championships in major sports. So can the Bengals be?
You never know.
Could be their year. I like it. Last question. I didn't know you're busy, guys. So I know you have to leave. We talked about the MVP, right? We talked about it's a quarterback award. which quarterback do you believe, if that's where you're leaning towards,
Wow.
is deserving of the MVP this year?
That's tough because no quarterback is really running away with it. I mean, the Chiefs are winning, but Mahomes isn't. He threw for under 200 yards against the Dolphins in Germany. And so Lamar Jackson, yeah, his team's playing well, but he's not lighting it up individually. Uh, Jalen Hurts, the Eagles are playing well, and he's doing okay. And
Mm-hmm.
so to me, those three would be the front runner. And then on the back end, you say Trevor Lawrence. I believe uh, Joe will force his way into the mix if the Bengals can continue to win. But there's really no clear front runner this year. And this is why Tyreek Hill will be in contention because no quarterback has really, at this point in the season, just staked this claim and it's kind of the front runner and is running away with it. You just don't know. This year is so much parity as far as who is just having a great season from the quarterback position.
That's great. Well, TJ, you heard it here first. I'm picking Tyreek Hill to win the MVP. If he wins it, I want you to remember this conversation. You heard it here first. All right, I'm picking him.
That's
it has to
bold.
happen.
That is so. It's so rare. We just don't see it anymore. You don't see it anymore. But honestly, that would be great for the league if he was to win it. He just has to get back to doing what he was doing, another 120 yards like it's nothing each and every week. And he has a chance. I just don't believe he'll win it. But if he does, I will remember that.
And I will be bragging around. I'll tell you that much right now. My colleagues are going to be, they know I have a big head. So I'm going to be talking about it and talking trash all day long. TJ, thanks again, man. Really appreciate you coming out here and talking ball. It was awesome meeting you, and hopefully we can get you on here again.
All right, Chris, I appreciate it, man. Thank you, bro.